Right, hello and welcome to a little video guide I made for a mobile game called Mob Control that I just like to play a fair bit. And this guide, I'll be covering the Kraken Clash clan event and how to kind of, maximize your scores. So I was able to get 16 billion damage in the last event, taking first place out of every player from the 10 clans that were put into my group. And yeah, pretty good loadout that I've been using. This is what I'm using. That's what it's based off of. I don't guarantee that I have the best strategy, but it's worked pretty well for me. So what loadout am I using? I'm using Big Bertha Cannon. I'm using Alien Mob, Syrian for my champion, and Summon Gate for my ultimate. One thing that you really have to realize is that this is a very heavy pay to win event. So you are only going to do well if you spend a lot of money using skips boosting. So yeah, just keep that in mind that, the loadout alone isn't just going to carry you. So how do I generally do this? I generally use 3 boss tickets for every fight. 5 boss tickets can be kind of a waste when you're using this strategy of spending a lot of boosts. You can cap your damage on fights too often, which means that you're leaving damage on the table. 3 boss tickets doesn't cap too often, so we don't lose potential there, but we do have to spend more skips using 3 boosts on every battle because we're doing more battles. If you really want the absolute maximum score, then you should be going for 1 boss ticket per fight, but it's going to be really expensive on the skips using 1 boss ticket every fight. But you will get a better score. There are players who managed to break 20 billion damage and they were spending 1 boss ticket per fight instead of 3 like I'm doing. All right, so yeah, when it comes to that boosting, comes to that pay to win, I'm always going to be picking the double cannon with Big Bertha, or you can use the ×2 fire rate. I tend to avoid the ×2 fire rate when possible, just because that one can sometimes delay how fast your champions charge. I don't know why, but we've observed that many times as players that you get slightly less champions out when you use 2 times fire rate. So we want to be using that double cannon. If you, and that's really important with Big Bertha. And then if you are not free to play and you can do extra boosts, we want to be using the fast champion charge and then the ×10 gate. So those are our best 3. Generally, you're not going to see a big advantage using all 4 boosts. But, if you want that pay to win, if you want to be better than everybody else and you can afford to, go ahead, use 4 boosts. You should be seeing slightly improved scores and results using 4 boosts over 3. It's just not very cost effective as you don't get a lot of extra points for all of those extra skips that are being spent. So yeah, go ahead, you do you. You can also get okay scores with 2 boosts. 3 isn't completely mandatory. I don't know what that total point difference would be, but I would expect that, if I got 16 billion using 3 boosts on almost every map, you'd probably still get at least 12 billion using 2 boosts on every map instead of 3. So there you have it. That's kind of the way to think about the fight, right? Free-to-play players, you can always use at least that 1 boost by watching an ad. And then paid players, ideally you want to be using 3 boosts, but you can still get okay scores with just 2 boosts. And if using 2 boosts, I would use the double cannon and the fast charge champions, as that gives you the best chance of being alive with Big Bertha Cannon and not dying early on. Okay, so I am going to cover a little bit about alternative loadouts you can use and some thought process around the different loadouts and options. But first, I'm going to cover a little bit about just a general strategy that you're seeing on the screen, how to do this. So there's lots of mistakes I make. There's lots of things I don't learn until I actually review these recordings that I made. So this map, good example. Anytime I place champs on the right-hand side of the map, those champs get shot into the water and they die. So be very mindful of this. This is kind of your big challenge, is that champions die when they touch the water, and we really got to be careful about the champions we're using and the timing of releasing them in regards to not getting murdered by the water. So so just be careful with that. Some maps are really obvious, like that double speed ramp, it throws them straight into the water. Other maps are not going to be so obvious. This map is one that wasn't so obvious until I started looking at my recordings. So one of the things to note is every time the boss is about to do a tentacle slam, he actually backs up away from the beach and he's further out from the water. So even though I have ranged champs, they still have a limited range that they can shoot, and they will actually move forward to try and shoot him. So right now the boss is close to the platform. My champion's just fine being released through that portal. He ends up, not moving forward to attack the boss. And once he's already there, he tends not to need to move forward anymore when the boss backs up to do a tentacle slam. But newly spawned ones, you do run that risk. So in this case, with this map and this portal, see how I just spawned that one champion when the boss, just before he's about tentacle slam? Well, he went through the portal and then he walked forward into the water, got himself murdered. So on a map like this, with that portal, I want to make sure I'm releasing champs into the portal only after the tentacle is slammed. If I try and do it right here, see, he'll die again. He's going to walk forward in a second, even though the boss did come forward there. So just keep that in mind. The other thing is we want to make sure that we're spreading out our champs so that they don't die easily to tentacle slams. So, this is the biggest problem is, you keep slamming your stuff and then they're not doing damage to the boss. So just try and spread them out a little bit, as well as being very aware of that timing of your release. We also want to make sure that we're not getting slammed, right? So if you know that the boss is going to slam soon, it's better to wait and delay your champion half a second or a second to guarantee it goes somewhere and won't get slammed than it is to just put it out and try and get a next champion even faster. Might depend which champion you're using, but yeah, that's in general the idea there. So there's not really too much else we can do about optimizing our strategy other than just our champion release, where we release them, the timing of releasing based on the boss slams. Mobs just come out, you try and throw them through the best gate possible to get as many mobs as possible. As far as the ultimate goes, when you're using Summon Gate, it's pretty straightforward. Try and put it somewhere where it'll multiply your mobs the most. Sometimes that, in a case like this map, there's that nice choke point in the middle, so I can put a Summon Gate right in the middle, and that's going to mean that I have the best chance of multiplying as many mobs as possible. Other times I might be putting it right in front of my cannon so that when I'm dodging the boss slams, I still have a chance to, send mobs through there and it'll still multiply them and get them through the gates. Sometimes multiplication gate might make most sense closer to the boss, right? Every map's a little different. You just got to figure out. If you do use any of the other ultimates, the placement won't matter as much. So now let's talk a little bit about alternate loadouts that you can use and some of my thoughts on why I'm using this loadout and other things that might still work quite well. So cannon, you can definitely use flamethrower as long as you're flame buffing all of your mobs. You're going to see really good results and you should easily get the same damage as Big Bertha. Will you get better? I don't know. It's such a limited amount of games I can play, right? This is a pretty new event. You don't get a lot of tickets to play it lots. But based on my small sample size of 5 tests, I have found that Big Bertha with 3 boosts and Flamethrower Cannon with 3 boosts do a very similar amount of damage. And I don't think it's enough of a difference to really care. So I'm using Big Bertha because it has 3 health. Just makes my life way easier having that 3 health. So you can definitely use Flamethrower Cannon if you're finding that Big Bertha is hard to stay alive with. If you're only using a single boost, you might find sometimes that it's not easy to stay alive with, and so it might be worth it for you to switch to Flamethrower. But if you're using 2 boosts or 3 boosts, it should be really easy to keep yourself from dying, and you shouldn't really have to worry. And then you get the added benefit of those 3 health, so you can survive some tentacle slams. Really, really nice. No other cannon is going to compete with Flamethrower and Big Bertha. You're just not going to see that. And that applies to all of mob control when it comes to, total damage. Those are your best 2 options. Yes, triple cannon can be fun, but you could use it for this game mode, but it's not going to do more damage than flame buffed mobs out of Flamethrower Cannon. I could be wrong. I haven't tested it, but on other game modes, it doesn't help. So I'm assuming it applies the same to this game mode. As far as our mob goes, you want to be using basically your highest level mob. If there's 5 levels, like you have a 60 and a 65, don't worry about it. They're both your highest level mob. But you want to be using a really fast mob that's your highest level. So alien, ninjas, bats, maybe chicken, right? So you want to use one that's fast, gets them to the enemy faster, doing more damage. Great thing. So yeah, just keep that in mind. That, you want to use that fast mob at the highest level you've got possible. I've tested with slow mobs such as knights and bear and stuff like that, and it was quite noticeable, the difference in the score. So I think it's pretty safe to say that they don't score as well when using those slower mobs. As far as your champion goes, you don't want to use melee, because every time the boss backs up and it wants to, do that tentacle slam, your melee mobs, way higher chance that they're going to die to the water. So most melee mobs die to the water. Captain Kaboom also loves to die to water. So F him, don't use him either, even though he does have a ranged attack. I don't find that any of the mobs champs. I don't find that any of the champs particularly do a ton of damage. So yeah, I just don't really think that the amount of damage they do makes a big difference. You could try experimenting with Mobzilla, stuff like that. But Syrian buffs your mobs. So that's why I chose Syrian, because I'm like, he's buffing my mobs, he's making them do more damage. Most of my damage is already coming from my mobs. So to me, that makes the most sense, but you could definitely experiment with other ranged mobs. And then when it comes to our ultimate choice, we do have a few choices. I don't have a lot of testing to know which is best. I chose Summon Gate because it has a really long duration, and I know that my mobs are doing the most amount of damage. I thought about Overdrive, but the thing with Overdrive is you get so limited choices for ultimates. It would really suck if you used Overdrive and then the spawn clones just die. It makes that ultimate useless, whereas at least Summon Gate stays on the map. It keeps buffing your mobs. So you could try Overdrive, but it's going to be more luck-based as to whether or not it pays off. Summon Gate's just reliable and dependable. And then kind of a sleeper, I haven't tested it, but I'm going to the next Kraken event, is I wonder if Rainbow Rage will actually be good, right? Because it's buffing our mobs. I'm like, who knows? Rainbow Rage might be the play. So that would be the other one that I would try testing out. So yeah, that's my thoughts on what you can do for loadout. You can use Flamethrower, you can use Big Bertha. You want to use any mob that's fast, that's at your highest level or very close to your highest level. And then you're going to be choosing for champs. You can try different things. Syrian is my thought, but potentially a different ranged one. Oops, I accidentally paused the recording at the wrong moment there. So don't know where this came back in, but yeah, as far as champs go, there might be something better than Syrian. I haven't really play tested enough. Mobzilla might be fun to try, but yeah, you'd need a ranged, and I'm not even sure if anybody else would do any better. You'd need something that does high damage pretty fast. So like, tried using Starscream. I wasn't a big fan of just how it plays out, but it might work for you. Not too many other final thoughts that I can think of. So, we covered the loadout, we covered some alternatives. We talked about how there's definitely a little bit of strategy about where you release your champs and the timing of releasing them, especially with those tentacle slams. But it's not a crazy amount of strategy, right? We talked about the cost efficiency of how to maximize your score. Are you going to be buying multiple boosts? Do you want to go with all 4? How many boss tickets are you going to use? So yeah, at the end of the day, this event is pay to win. And if you're not spending that cash, you're not going to get those crazy scores. And it's really about how important it is to you to have that really high score in this event and help your clan out. Because at the end of the day, there's not a lot of personal rewards you get from having a high score. It's more just bragging rights and then the sparks that you make for your clan, so your clan can place a lot higher in the sparks leaderboard. So hopefully that helps everybody. And yeah, hopefully you liked the longer format and found those extra tips helpful in addition to just giving you the basic loadout and thought process at the beginning of the video.